Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you very much for making time to attend our webinar. Today, we are going to be discussing a new wave that is going on in Zimbabwe, that of dispossession and repossession of farmland post-fast-track land reform. First, I think that we should acknowledge that the post-colonial Zimbabwean state inherited a dual and racialized agrarian structure from British colonial rule in 1980. But a dramatic process happened from 2000. That was the occupation of former white-owned large-scale farms by Black families. There have been lots of intellectual debates about this development. Other scholars like Professor Sam Moyo, Yeros. I also see that Professor Joseph Hanlon is here. They have indicated that this process was a challenge to the neoliberal and coloniality regime, because it was one of the most radical since the end of Cold War. But others like Jocelyn Alexander have also stated that it was part of a complex process of state remaking, which was underpinned by violence, patronage, and justified by a very patriotic ideology. However, all the scholars and commentators tend to agree that this process has reconfigured the agrarian structure of Zimbabwe from one that was dominated by former white farmers to one that is now dominated by Black smallholder farmers. Does this mark the resolution of the land question in Zimbabwe, or the redistributive land question, to be more precise? Prosper Matondi, in his book, Zimbabwe's Fast-Track Land Reform, tend to suggest. Sorry about that. So, I was saying that Prosper Matondi, in his recent book, he tends to suggest that the land question has been resolved in Zimbabwe. And we now have this new process whereby there is dispossession of Black families that are living on customary land. And there's also repossession of farmland to some of the Black elite farmers. And then the question is, what kind of a post-colonial Zimbabwean state do we have in Zimbabwe today? Is the ZANU-PF government, is ideological standpoint on Black empowerment still the same as it was under President Robert Mugabe? Are there new land questions probably intertwined? The land question of elite concentration and the land question of dispossession. So to help us unpack these complex questions, we have got Siposami Malunga in the house. Sipo Malunga is a public intellectual of note to those who follow his works. He's also son to the late Sidney Malunga, a Liberation War hero, and the current director of OSISA. And we also have Professor Jonathan Moyo. Professor Jonathan Moyo is an intellectual. He's a former cabinet minister, former information minister, and also former minister of higher education. And he's going to assist us to unpack some of these issues. I think that he's a farmer, but at a certain point, I read somewhere where he was insinuating that actually it's his wife who is a farmer, but we shall hear more from him. And we have Kanya Noko here with us. She is the National Vice Board Chairperson of a Masvingo research organization that has been working with the Chilonga community. The Chilonga community is facing threats of dispossession, and we shall also hear more from her. Then we have Cynthia Gwenzi. Cynthia Gwenzi is the Wellness and Gender Officer for the Platform for Youth and Community Development. They actually do work in Chipinge district. She's also representing a community that is facing dispossession, and we shall also hear a bit more from her. And last but not least, we have Flora Nekatambe. She's a member of the royal family in the community in Hwange, Matabeleland North. And we are also going to hear more from her. So without wasting much time, I think we should go straight to the questions. I think I'm going to start with you, Nkanya Noko. Can you tell us a bit more about who is being dispossessed, how and why? And you have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. So I'm going to be speaking particularly about the people in Chilonga. So the people in Chilonga are people who are living in under a district that is called Chiredzi, so here in Zimbabwe. So those people are members of a minority tribe, which is the tribe. And currently they are under threat of eviction from the land that they have been residing on and farming from the 1960s. So what is happening currently is that the state is facilitating this eviction. So through statutory instruments. So there is a statutory instrument that was passed, and this instrument says that the land that they are currently living on has been so at the beginning, initially it was said that this land was being set aside for lucerne grass production. And when we made inquiries on the ground, we then found out that this land was to be set aside for grass production by a private entity. And this private entity is Den Dairy. And so they were going to farm lucerne grass for. So the land that we are talking about here, the land in Chilonga, it is land that is about 12,000 hectares. So when these people are removed or evicted from this particular land, it will affect about over 1,000 households. And this actually translates to about 14,000 people that will be affected. So when it came to the actual process with regards to the displacement or the dispossession of these people, the state actually conducted door-to-door consultations. So it claims that it has met the people and it has explained the processes to the people and everything that will be done to the people to be affected, that are going to be affected. But then when we then went on the ground to make inquiries, the people that are going to be affected are actually saying that they have not been properly consulted. So for of them, they are saying that the first time that they heard about these evictions was either from the or from relatives or neighbors who had come to know about it. So they are saying that it is not true that they have actually been consulted. And then also they say that they saw people that came looking and observing their land, and they assume that those people are probably surveyors that had come to look at their land before they had actually been properly informed and consulted with regards to this proposed eviction. And then also, they tell us that when they were then visited by some high-profile members of the opposition party, after that, some men came in unmarked vehicles and began to threaten members of the community. So members of the community who were said to be more outspoken about opposing this this eviction. So really, for the people in, they say that insofar as consultation, really they have not been consulted. They have not had anyone properly sit them down and tell them exactly what is the land that they are being removed from, and they have not had anyone tell them as to where they are going to be moved to. So the concerns for the people in Chilonga really are the fact that this move or them being moved from this particular land will affect their source of livelihood. So they are people that depend on agriculture. They farm small grain crops. They also are into livestock production. So having lived on this particular land from the 1960s, adapted to this particular land. They have their ways in which they are surviving on this particular land. So they are afraid and they have fears that they are not aware, they do not know what type of land they will be moved to. They will be able to continue to sustain themselves in the same way that they have been doing at Chilonga, where they have been based. And then their other concerns also relate to the graves of their loved ones, which they have on this particular piece of. So they have lived there for years, and their ancestors are actually buried on that particular land. So them being moved will no longer have access to this land and be able to conduct some rituals that they have to conduct at the gravesites site of their loved ones. And then also the other issue pertains to the culture and tradition. So they feel that if they are moved a piece of land, it will affect, dilute their culture and tradition. So here they are people that have their places that they consider sacred. So they have pools, they have their conduct the rituals for rainmaking ceremony and so on. So if moved from those areas, they will not be guaranteed that they will be able to still practice those same rituals in the same manner that they have been doing. So as it stands, the current situation at Chilonga, in as much as the government has tried to check in terms of reversing the immediacy of the, however, the eviction still looms or still hangs over the people in Chilonga as they still are, as the land that they are living on has been set aside by the state. That means that in as much as the government says, well, it is not going to, it means that technically they are now living on a land that does not belong to them. It is land that has been set aside for other purposes. So the situation as it stands at the Chilonga, for the Chilonga people who are under the Chiredzi district.
Thank you very much, Kanya Noko, for such a detailed presentation. Let us move straight away from Masvingo district, from Masvingo province to Manicaland province, and hear what's happening in Manicaland from Cynthia Kwenze.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll present on the case of Mahachi village, which is in Chipinge district and in Wadi 24. The case study is a turn from communal lands into urbanization. And the people that are actually going to be dispossessed are women, young people, and men, but the majority are being women. Since in the hype of dispossession, men tend to run away, leaving women and children behind. And at this point in time, 410 households has been dispossessed. And this we have recorded during our study or our research, which took place in December 2020. And we believe the numbers are actually more, and they're actually even escalating, as the 410 is those that we consulted and reached directly during our study. Then on how it's actually the rural district council and the people are actually being dispossessed by the Chipinge Rural District Council. The Rural District Council is using two instruments to dispossess people. And they're actually currently using the Rural District Council Act, which actually stipulates that councils are to provide for government and management of its area at the local level. And specifically, councils are required to act a representative, informed, and responsible decision maker in the interest of its community. And they are also using the Communal Lands Act, which also stipulates that communal land is vested in the president, who shall permit it to be occupied and used in accordance with the act. The process which the Chipinge Road District Council is using is not consultative. And this is so because the Road District Councils Act have been given the mandate or have been mandated to have an overall role to decide what's actually right or wrong for their communities. So whenever they feel it's right and wrong. So the decision is the council right. And so it's not as consultative. And when they decide to consult, it's the process is so few.
Cynthia, it seems we are having problems.
Also, can I start? Or hello, Doc.
You can go ahead. You were breaking.
Okay. So where can I start now?
No, just continue.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying the council, so they use the right to take land or to decide whatever they feel like. And the villagers are during our study. The councillors, they've reached this need, like which is Hama of Ward 24 and Councillor Refias Maposa of Ward 16, that is in Chechete Mahachi village, and Councillor of Ward 16, Kondo, who is Councillor Refias Maposa. They've actually stated that they've made applications to the central states to convert communal land into state land. And the vision is shared beyond political parties. And that now there is competition among councillors themselves to make Chipinge Road District Council prioritize urban development. And we have Kondo, which is Ward 16, and we also have Munyokowere village, which is Ward 25 of Chipinge district, which is also displacing community people to pave way for urbanization, and they are paving way for growth points without even making consultation with the public, whether the public want the development, whether it's the development that the communities want, or it's only good for them, since as councillors, they've already resolved that there is need to move for urbanization. But they also don't consider that with the type of people that reside in Chipinge district, will they be able enough to pay for the stands, for the stands, or will they be able to even purchase the stands, since low density residential stand in Chiredzi is pegged at around 2,000 US. So with the type of people who reside in such a community, will they be able to purchase these stands when such move happens? And these communities are actually disposed to pave way for, also to pave way for agricultural purposes, with an example of Green Fuel, which is a corporate company and which has displaced 1,754 households in Chilonga and Chisombanje in Chipinge. And in Chipinge West, there's also a rush of macadamia farming, where powerful individuals are actually displacing people so that they can pave way for the farming of macadamia nuts. Then in Mahachi, Chiredzi was
Cynthia, I think
before it's to
thank you, Cynthia. I think we are having problems with your network, but we have been able to hear some of the main points. Maybe you can switch off your video and summarize in 2 minutes. We see whether that makes a difference.
Okay, thank you, Doc. Are you getting me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, to summarize what I've been saying, I was saying our case study is that of Mahachi, where the people are young women, men, and young people are actually dispossessed to pave way for urbanization. And this has been a resolution made by councillors and the council itself to modernize. And this has been a rush with all the councillors competing to modernize Chipinge district. And for now, we have Mahachi, Kondo, and Munyokowere as well. And we also have communities that are dispossessed to pave way for agricultural purposes, where we have communities like Chisumbanje and Shinyankwakwa, where Green Fuel is dispossessed communities, and that is 1,754 households which has been dispossessed to pave way for Green Fuel company, which is in need of 400,000 hectares of land for agricultural purposes. And in Chipinge West, we have powerful individuals who are dispossessing people for macadamia nuts farming. And for to date, 410 households have been dispossessed in Chiredzi Mahachi village. And also in 750 households have been dispossessed in Munyokowere to pave way for that growth point. And we also have 300 households who have been dispossessed in Kondo. But with the 1,754 households in Chisumbanje, the company is expanding with the target of occupying 40,000 hectares of arable land. The hectares are only known to the company, but when Platform for Youth and Community Development Trust took the company to court in 2012, it has consumed 13,500 hectares beyond the disputed 5,112 hectares. The process is selective and only consulted those that support their plans. And that is the business players with money. The process of acquiring land has been violent and forceful. The villagers have resisted, with a number having been arrested. And in the process, Rural District Council, Green Fuel and Powerful People uses both state operatives and ZRP to shield the violent seizure of communal lands. What we have are court cases which are still ongoing, and consultations with PYCD to challenge laws that are being used to disadvantage the people. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, since you were very clear there at the end. For the purposes of our viewers who might not know, ZRP, it stands for the Zimbabwe Republican Police. So we see a combination there of the local, state, and private companies dispossessing the poor and vulnerable living on customary land. Now let's quickly move from Manicaland province to Matabeleland and hear what is also happening there. We have here in the house Flora Nekatambe to tell us more. Welcome, Flora, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The people of Dinde are being dispossessed of their ancestral land. So Dinde is a village about 27 km from the coal mining town of Hwange on the Victoria Falls Bulawayo Road. So originally the people of Dinde were relocated around the year 1920 from Mbala, which is an area in the Hwange parks, to pave way for the game park, and were resettled in Dinde. So an exploration special grant for coal mining was issued to a Chinese company, and it covers about 4,070 hectares in 4 wards, which is namely Ward 13, 14, 19, and 20. There is potential displacement of around 850 households with an estimated population of about 3,500 people. And so when we look at the Nambia people, they are a minority group. Then when we look at the map, which is going to be covered, this land which is going to be dispossessed, the areas are mainly around the main road, the major road, the highway, the Victoria Falls Bulawayo Highway. So these people, the communities, have established themselves and are able to sell their wild fruits and vegetables, sculptures, and things like that within that main road. So this company did not carry out a proper, proper consultative meetings with the community. So the meeting which they claim was a consultation meeting. The community actually disputes that it was a consultative meeting. They actually say it was a meeting, I think, with local leaders, but the community just bulldozed in that meeting, and a list of people was produced, and that was the one which was used as evidence for them to say they carried out an consultation. So they were supposed to carry out an environmental and social impact assessment, but initially when the community looked for these documents, they couldn't get them. And later the document was produced by Emma during a meeting which was held with the minister, with the resident minister. So Emma indicated that drilling of boreholes, the exploration boreholes, was going to be done in consultation with the community. But now when the communities tried to resist, when this company started drilling the boreholes, they were actually threatened, and the chairperson of the Dinde Residents Association was arrested. So the community is in a dilemma. They really don't know what to do, and they don't know what is going to happen after the exploration. There is no full disclosure by the company of their activities. So the community is wondering whether environmental and social impact assessment, another one before they mine, is going to be carried out, or whether the community is going to be consulted. They're actually in a dilemma. They don't know what's going to happen because this company has not disclosed on the processes or what they'll be doing within the community. The communities also has fear of destruction of their heritage sites and graves, and also their shrines and ritual sites. The disruption of their graves, they actually say it's going to distort and destroy their heritage and also their culture, their protection, because they take these some of these sites where their ancestors are buried as sites where these people are actually watching on them. So they are their keepers and their custodians. So they fear of that. And also the other issue, the main issue which they fear, there is a river, the Nyantue River, which is their main source of drinking water, and also it's there for their livestock. So they fear pollution, especially the issues of acid mine drainage. We know it's a challenge worldwide. So the communities are fears that if this mine takes place, that means their river might be polluted. And when we look at Nyantue River, it is a great or a large catchment population. So the people have been highlighting some of the projects within the district. For example, there is a project which is along the Deca Road. So the river was grossly polluted and fish is dying. People have bulging stomachs. People have discolored teeth, and also livestock is dying. So from that example, really, the communities of India have great concerns. They also fear forced relocations of the communities. They have the deep tanks, they have the schools which are around these clinics and veterinary services, and also the business center which is around. So they fear that maybe when they are forced to relocate and all this infrastructure will actually be lost. They also of community gardens and irrigation schemes, and also they fear reduced and polluted grazing land, and also reduced and polluted farming land. The current state is that despite the no to this investment, this company has actually gone ahead. They are drilling exploration bores without the consent of the community. As I mentioned earlier, that when the community resisted, their chairperson was actually arrested. So currently the exploration is being carried out in one ward, that is Ward 13. Then their gravesite, their graves which were actually which were tampered with, holes were dug in about 3 graves. Then there are also people who have been seen around the area, coming in and out of the area without any explanation. And some of these people are actually doing surveying within the area. These people are also placing pegs within people's backyards, their fields, all over. So they are everywhere, and people are actually concerned. They don't know their future. They've actually put a lot, because they actually don't know what is going to be of them, whether they are going to be relocated or issues like that. So that's the state of the Dinde community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that detailed presentation. I think we also hear a story of private companies actually dispossessing people for coal mining, and also for China. So it's also foreign companies being involved. Issues of non-voluntary dispossession going on at the moment in Matabeleland. Yeah, so we have heard from the communities. I think it's time now we turn to also hear from above what is happening to some of the individuals and families who have managed to acquire land for agriculture. And let me start with Professor Jonathan Moyo. Professor Jonathan Moyo, can you please share with us who is being targeted by this state, how and why? I'll give you 7 minutes to answer this question, though I know that it's very difficult to give 7 minutes to a former government spokesperson. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Zamchea. It is indeed difficult to give 7 minutes and expect the former government spokesperson to honor the 7 minutes. So you might have to use your gavel. But I would like to start by thanking you for hosting this, in my view, important discussion. As to your question, I think in the first place, we should interrogate whether in fact we are talking about the state doing this, the repossession or dispossession. In my view, and not just as an opinion, but from my own personal experience and the experiences of others I know, this phase of what is happening within the agricultural land sector is being done by possessive individuals, not by the state. I don't think there is a coherent or even any kind of state policy to dispossess and or repossess, but there are individuals who are taking advantage of their positions in the state and using it to dispossess. But of course, there have been, especially when it comes to communities, as we've seen in Chiredzi, instances where the powerful individuals who are working with powerful cartels elevate the exercise to some state policy, and we see them even gazetting through instruments and so forth. But if we are looking at the examples which have affected people like myself, and you ask who is targeted, well, because it's individuals who are powerful either in terms of their position in the military or security sector in general, or taking advantage of their positions in government or even in the ruling party. The targeted individuals are either, well, the general excuse would be malcontents. They target malcontents, Anorasagwara and people like that. But in specific terms, they target people who have fallen out of favor or who are now at odds with the system, especially former members of the ruling party and government or the security sector. And they target them in order to show an example to those who remain how cold it can get if you are outside, make life very difficult so that no one would want to be like you to follow your bad example. If you are no longer one of us, you will literally become nothing. And this is entertained in ZANU-PF circles almost like an ideology. It is very important to the leadership to show that life is possible and enjoyable only if you are with us. All the things that you are supposed to have acquired, or in fact acquired when you were in there, you must lose. The others who are targeted are those who are presumed to be sponsoring or part of the sponsors of regime change activities, in order to show them that in their terms, working with the enemy does not pay. How do they do this? Well, I think in the cases that have affected people like myself, there are usually three ways they do this. The most common one, which is supposed to put the fear of God on the targeted individual, is to send armies of their cronies, members of the security forces who may be or in fact off duty, the youth militia, to invade your farm, to just occupy your farm. Just stay there, start singing, bring all sorts of funny things, food, make noise, and get your family so afraid that you find yourself remaining there alone, and maybe deciding that you should no longer be on the land. The other one, which is sometimes is done differently, but usually is an escalation of the common one of invading your farm, is to get the minister to send you an eviction letter or some kind of repossession letter. And if you have no capacity to assert your rights through the legal system, you pack and go. But if you are a fighter and seek legal assistance, then they target you by invoking some legal instrument, gazetting, and when they do that, they even send the police to get you out. My case was and remains very interesting, but interesting from people like you who study this, but very painful to me and the family. And it's for me, I've had this going on twice. The first I must say, we bought our farm. We paid for it. We got a loan from CBZ, paid the farm. For the farm. And we did this in July of 2002. When there was my first fallout with the system in 2005, when I ran as an independent candidate for Cholocho, and I was deemed to have expelled myself, Masawi, who I think the late Masawi was the governor, started sending people, the youth, and putting the issue of my farm on the agenda of the provincial coordinating committee, and on the agenda of the district JOC in Mazowe, where the farm is, as well as the provincial JOC in Mashonaland Central. And they sent messages which found expression in the press saying, you are criticizing the government, you are criticizing the president, and yet you are occupying prime Mbuya Neander's land, which their ancestors could never have dreamt to have. I got very upset. I then also decided to organize, and I responded in public and said, I'm aware that some of you occupy prime land in Hwange, and Martinoth in general, you are occupying King Lobengula's land. I'm going to mobilize and get those people sent back to Mbuyanehanda's land. So they got a bit concerned and afraid. It ended up getting to President Mugabe's ear, and he reminded them that I was an instrumental voice in defending, and they stopped. The last one, to conclude by way of example, since you are really looking for information, note that in the first case, it was an individual Masawi, not the state, trying to be good and go after a perceived malcontent. Now, in 2019, when the late Terence Shiri was Minister of Lands, he targeted me specifically, continuing the fight we had before the coup, which was over command agriculture. I was very critical of command agriculture, and they were very involved as the army. They used it to fund the coup. And how he then pursued the policy, not the policy, because it isn't a policy, the dispossession, and it's not even repossession, was to deploy 5 army people and, as Minister of Lands, allocate to them portions of our farm. And the pretext that was used, the real one, not the one on paper, was to say our farm is being used to hide weapons that are intended for use to cause problems, violence, and so forth. And those army people who were put by Shiri illegally are still there. They are not farming. They tried to behave like they were farming, but they are not. We went to court to try and get them out. They get served. They don't show up in court. They don't respond to the summons and so forth. And the matter of our farm is in the courts as we speak. I think I have my 7 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Prof. You have been so disciplined with time. We really appreciate. That's a very sad story. Let's also quickly hear, there are questions that are beginning to come, but we have a question and answer session to our viewers. So now let's hear from Sipho Sami Malunga. What's your view on this? Who is being targeted? How and why? And perhaps if you can also tell us about a little bit about your personal experience as Professor Moyo has done. You also have 7 minutes. You can go ahead. Since we can't hear you. Sipho, we can't hear you. Are you not muted? Sorry, Sipho, we can't hear you. Can you hear us, Sipho?
No, can see but can't hear.
Yes. Nganyiso, can you please attend to Sipho? And meanwhile, whilst he's trying to sort the technical challenge, can we have Professor Jonathan Moyo back? And Professor Jonathan Moyo, can you tell us about what is the nature of this state? Just perhaps in 3 minutes.
Sorry?
Yeah, following your presentation, perhaps can you tell us what is the nature of this state? How would you describe this state, perhaps in 3 minutes?
Yes, you assumed that I was a good student and listening to what is happening. So I just didn't hear, I thought Sipho was speaking and suddenly I heard my name being mentioned. So I take it, I'm now being asked in the context of my presentation, what is the nature of this state? But I hope whoever is asking me this question took note that I said, I don't think that this is a state policy. Currently in Zimbabwe isn't, I don't see a cohesive structure for policy making by the state. There has been quite a radical change since 2017 as a result of the coup. So you now have within the state cliques, groups, individuals, and it is these groups, these cliques that do all sorts of things. And in this particular case, we are talking about the dispossession, really, that's what it is, more than repossession. And I submitted that these individuals use this state, but they are not the state. They don't do it in their official capacity as custodians of the state. They do it in pursuit of their corruption, in pursuit of their possessive politics. And this is why we have a difficult situation. But Dr. Zamchea, you did caution that in this part of the discussion, we should hold on to the comments that respond to the next two category of questions. And I find that this question is inviting me to say things that I plan to say later.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Thank you. We can hear Sipho now. Sipho, you have 7 minutes. We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Great. Let me just reset my timer. Okay, thank you so much. I think a lot has been said already, and it would be a mistake to think that, as I guess Professor Moyo pointed out, that there is a specific taxonomy or a specific approach or policy to the way things are happening. It is very clear that the motivations for dispossession of communities are usually, especially when it's large communities, primarily to serve elite commercial interests. At a more personal level, it is clear that they are to serve personal interests, elite personal interests. And those of you who follow the news or who follow me will know that we are right now, right in the middle of such a dispossession. Myself and my partners at our farm in Nyamandlo. And we are challenging this dispossession, but it follows the pattern that was described by Professor Moyo, that an individual decides that they have an interest in the farm, and they then instrumentalize their position and a particular disposition of the government towards you or of the party towards you to advance their personal interests. It's a conflation of a public official role with personal predatory and corrupt interest, criminal in fact, I should add. So what you end up having, because if you don't know, you will believe, as you are entitled to, that there is a policy by the government to target you. I mean, I for one, I'm not a political actor. I'm unlike Professor Moyo, who has stood for political positions and who has been in cabinet and who, of course, the history of his relationship with the current people in power is well known, culminating in November. But I, for one, am not a political actor, but I am considered by the government as a critic. I'm considered as somebody who holds views that are unpalatable. I speak very openly and freely and critically on issues of concern, human rights issues, democracy issues, education rights, health rights, accountability issues, Kukuraundi issues. And I also happen to lead an organization that supports, communities, individuals, to hold government accountable, to promote and fight and protect human rights, to promote a more democratic political culture. Unashamedly so, I'm seen as the face of this organization, which is the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. And I dare say, and of course, Professor will laugh at this, he himself, when he was in government, also actually thought OSISA was this kind of organization that is opposed to government. So, because obviously, and it is in the nature of politics, right, that you scan the environment and you see who opposes, who questions, who contradicts, who questions your policies, who supports citizens to hold you accountable. And we understand that some of the work that some of the partners that we support, like, and I'll mention one because I'm free to mention this, say the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights that defends and protects human rights whenever they are violated, that it's seen as being unpalatable because the government would, of course, rather these people who are arrested languish in prison without any lawyers. And we believe that it is an absolute right for somebody to be represented by a lawyer, regardless of their political affiliations. And we believe that it is absolutely important that corruption should be unearthed, that journalists should do their work unimpeded, and the government must answer questions around its accountability for the way it manages public resources. So those kind of things are not appreciated by many. By some, they may be, but not by many. So an individual then will come and say, well, this gentleman here, Mr. Malunga, and then of course they tag so many things to my name, the son of the national hero, Sidney Malunga, who this, and then so, and then the name becomes so long, but who is fighting this government? As if my father never questioned the government. He was the number one critic and conscience in government, even though it was a unified ZANU-PF, he remained a voice of conscience and the voiceless of the public in Zimbabwe. So I guess maybe I'm following in those footsteps, perhaps inadvertently so, but the point then becomes that somebody instrumentalizes that and says, hey, you know what? The government is unhappy with you. You are talking too much. You are criticizing too much, and you are working to overthrow the government. This organization that you lead, you are a serious regime change agent. Like, you really think if I wanted to overthrow the regime, I would be so clumsy, I would be talking on Facebook and Twitter. I mean, come on. And I say, look, then you are told, well, you know, the government is going to take your farm because of this. And as a matter of fact, your Professor Moyo's farm was referenced. That as soon as we are done with Professor Moyo and Xavier, we are coming after your farm. And of course, I said my response was, do your worst. We'll be waiting. But at that stage, you are not sure whether this is government policy or this is an individual. But then you begin to realize that it's an individual who might have shown interest, who might have asked to join. And then you begin to see everything happening. And then one day, the farm is designated. The minister has signed. A minister you don't even know. A minister and a permanent secretary I have praised I've praised the minister on social media because I believe, in spite of whatever other concerns I might have about other aspects and elements of government, in my opinion, even as I looked at the way the minister and his permanent secretary have been managing agriculture, despite the other issues, I felt they were doing very well. So I was shocked. The next thing, we get a designation letter. The minister has signed it. I don't even know this minister. I've never met him. I've never met the permanent secretary, but I look at how they support young people sometimes. It's not completely perfect, but there are concerns. But I saw by and large professionals. You know, they've worked in agriculture for years. They understand agriculture. And I even commented that this is what you get when you appoint professionals to run a ministry. So you get shocked, and then you know and you realize that, okay, so this is what it is. Is it the government? Because the government would have said at different points in time they are unhappy with you. They believe that you are trying to overthrow the government. They believe that you are sponsoring a regime change agent. So you ask yourself the questions, and that's why at this stage we're giving the government an opportunity on our side before we move to our next level of the fight. We're giving the government an opportunity to revisit this decision, to rethink it, and say to us, you know what, yes, it was us, the government, who took the land. Then we know what we're dealing with. Or to say, you know what, it wasn't us, it was somebody else. Because as Professor Moyo has pointed out, there are individuals who manipulate this system. There is even a judgment by Justice Matonsi on this issue, particularly in relation to the manipulation of power, the abuse and criminal abuse of power and authority, especially in the security sector, security services sector. And we know that there have been times when the government has decided to intervene when it realizes abuse, this serious abuse by its own officials. So I'll stop there. And I don't want to say more than that. I'm not going to mention names, as I've said before, because I think this is a matter that is sub judice. We believe that the government is addressing this at the highest level, is reflecting on it. We have made our representations, but it needs to be sorted out and it needs to be stopped. The government needs to make it clear what its policy is and to stick to it. It has huge implications for the economy, huge implications for investment, huge implications for people trusting the government policy. There is no way you can, a few months before, make a decision that you are regularizing the issue of land, you are compensating farmers, white farmers, you are doing all this, and then the next month you are taking land from black people. There's no way you can say that the land reform program was to take from white and give to black, and then you take to black. You just seem vindictive, abusive, and completely lawless. And the government needs to think very carefully about this, because that's exactly what it looks like. And that's exactly what we're going to be saying to the world. Don't invest in Zimbabwe, because we invested in Zimbabwe as Zimbabweans, and our land was taken. So don't you dare. What about you who are an outsider? Forget it. You're going to lose everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sipho. Yeah, I'm trying to manage time, but you are very concise. Let me go back to Cynthia so that we can hear Cynthia Gwenzi from Chipinge. Cynthia, in the context of this ongoing dispossession in Chipinge, what are the people's views about the government? Do they see the government as pro-people, pro-poor, or as pro-elite? What are the views from the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, perhaps in 2 minutes? And also then just tell us, what do you think needs to be done in 2 minutes as well?
Okay, thank you. Because of network, I will not connect my video. Is that okay, Doc?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. From the day-to-day work that we do as Platform for Youth and Community Development, what we have realized is that the government, and what people also realized is that the government of Zimbabwe is pro-elite in the sense that it excludes those who don't have money. Like I've already said, the villagers of Checheche, that is in Mahachi village, and those villagers in Munyokowere, and are actually dispossessed to pave way for residential stands. And the developer of the residential stands is Chiredzi, who is an external player and who also comes from Masvingo, displacing the community people of Chipinge. And what it simply means is those who don't have money are actually excluded in this new development of urbanization. The process now is different from the fast track land reform in 2000, like what Professor Jonathan Moyo and Posami has actually said. It's actually different in the sense that the 2000 land reform program was targeting these people in communities, unlike this, which is actually excluding the least people within the communities. There's now a change of livelihoods, whereby villagers are now resorting to vending to earn a living, since it's a case of urbanization without industrialization. Those without money are now crowded in small farms, where others are even renting 700 land, are even renting lands, and they are even paying up to 700 rands per month or per season to try and farm less than an acre of maize. And what's actually saddening is the 700 rands is actually paid whether there is drought or not. It's up to you, but you simply pay. And I think
Thanks, Cynthia. What needs to be done?
Okay, thank you, Doc. On what needs to be done, I think there is need to review the Raw District Act as well as the communal, as the current laws are not homegrown since they have been used even before independence. And there's also need to there's also need for harmonization of land laws that speak directly to the issues that affect the people of Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cynthia. Let's also hear from Masvingo. Noko, can you tell us what are the people's views about the government in the context of dispossession, and what are they saying needs to be done in under 4 minutes?
People in Masvingo, particularly the Chilonga district, they feel that because then they expect the state would actually protect them.
We can hardly hear you. Maybe switch off the video and continue. Kanya, what? We can hardly hear you. So
Okay. Can you
yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I was for the people in Masvingo, particularly in Chilonga district, they feel betrayed by the state, that they protect them as they are a vulnerable group. They are part of a minority, being the Shangani. So it stands, what we are seeing is the state is actually removing them. This is nearly about 14,000 people being removed to pave way for a private corporate company to set up loosen grass production. So basically what they have been saying is, why is the company not actually partnering with them as they are on the land currently? Why are they not being subcontracted to farm this? They can benefit in that way. They get the loosened grass and they also get some kind of source of livelihood. And then when it comes to the issue of what needs to be done, Well, I will agree with Cynthia that really the Communal Lands Act needs to be repealed. It needs to be replaced with an act that actually guarantees secure land tenure for people in communal lands. And then also, if it should be that these people are to be moved or evicted from these lands, really there needs to be proper and meaningful consultations. So the people that are going to be affected need to be consulted from the get-go. They need to be informed before the statutes are published. And then when it comes to where they are going to be moved to, they also need to be consulted. They need to know where exactly they are going to be moved to. They need to know if the place is going to be suitable for them to continue sustaining their livelihoods like they were doing. They would also need to know if the place actually has access to basic amenities. So how far will the place be from schools and hospitals and so on? So really there is a need for the state to actually ensure that these evictions, if necessary and if need be, are done in a proper manner.
Thank you very much. Let's move to Matebele and Flora. Maybe just settle on, you are a member of the royal family. What are the people saying needs to be done from the community?
Okay, thank you. The people are actually in a dilemma, as I mentioned earlier on. So they don't know what will happen after the exploration. So now what they really feel should be done are consultations. They want the company to go back to the drawing board, consult them on hear their views on about the mining project. So that's what they want, that's what they feel. And should I go on to the next one?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe on the next question, I feel that a special grant should have should have inclusive bottom-up approach, where the communities are involved, where the communities are consulted. It shouldn't be, communities are not supposed to be taken by surprise just to see investors coming into their communities. So special grants should have that bottom-up approach. And the communities actually have indigenous knowledge, so they have more information actually, more than maybe the explorations which people do with their machines and the like. The indigenous information is also important. Then the other point, consultation processes should be inclusive, and also they should be transparent, and they should be exhaustive. I feel the Environmental Management Agency should be involved in all consultations. They shouldn't rely on consultants doing consultative meetings alone. So the agency has to be there when consultations are done, so that they are done in a proper way. Then my last point is heritage sites must be respected and be protected. You can imagine people have their values, they have their cultures, they have their shrines, there are rituals which they normally do on those shrines and things like that. So if their culture, if their heritage sites are not protected, what will remain of them? So I feel really heritage sites need to be protected and also be respected. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very clear. Professor Jonathan Moyo, what needs to be done by who? Perhaps in 2 to 3 minutes, we are running out of time.
Yes, but I'm not the one who ate your time, Dr. Zamche. It's somebody else. should start where others have commented on to answer your important question. Is the government pro-people? No. Is the government pro-elite? No. It is pro-itself. It is a government that is preoccupied with self-preservation. And this has been the case since the coup. And when you have that, you create an opportunity for individuals to do the sort of things that we have highlighted. What should be done in an environment like this is like asking, what should a person in hell do? I think you should get out and find exit strategies. In Zimbabwe, at the moment, the environment is not conducive to asking policy questions. The environment is pregnant with very critical political and constitutional questions. It's very difficult to ask policy questions in a military state. It's very difficult to ask policy questions in a state that is attacking the very bedrock of what should be its foundation, namely the Constitution. So what do you do? Well, I think that perhaps the remaining ray of hope should find expression or at least be encouraged by the fact that although the Constitution is under attack, we still have a Bill of Rights that is justiciable, and that the questions we are talking about this afternoon are about fundamental rights and therefore justiciable, and have a vigorous, vibrant public advocacy program and public interest litigation to defend the communities that are under attack. And of course, we know individuals like Mr. Malunga are defending themselves, but the communities are exposed and defenseless, and it might help to expose that by engaging in massive public interest litigation to highlight the issue. Otherwise, at the moment, honestly, seriously speaking, there is no policy framework that lends itself to the kind of interventions that one would expect.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Sipo, what needs to be done at this juncture?
Thank you. So at the most immediate level, we have communities that are being moved, disrupted, young children whose livelihoods are being affected. This needs to stop. So the government needs to stop these dispossessions. It needs to understand that for all the other criticism one might have about whether the government is pro-poor and these questions have been answered, it needs to understand that there is a political cost to what it is doing. And that there comes a point in time when you have to pay that cost. And that cost cannot be deferred by simply relying on the army or the police. You will pay the cost. And the government needs to understand this, that it needs to put an end to these dispossessions. That's the first thing. I'm talking about these large-scale community dispossessions. The second is that the government needs to realize that there is a cost to policy inconsistency. And the cost is the continued free fall of the economy. It's the continued shunning of the economy by investors. It is the continued mistrust by citizens in putting money in the country, in investing in the country. Because as long as the government indicates left and turns right, people will not trust it. So we can say so many things about which side, which political side one might be on or might not be on. Government needs to understand that that single dispossession of Malunga, Dlamini, and Moyo in Nyamandlovu, as insignificant as it might be to maybe everybody else, is significant to anyone who's thinking, let me take my 20,000 or 40,000 and put it in Zimbabwe and try and see whether I can help the economy. People will shun the country, they will. And mind you, they will have every reason to shun the country. And not only that, we Zimbabweans will be telling them not to come. And we will. Why would I tell people to come to Zimbabwe, my country that I love so much, when I cannot even protect my own investment in my own country? I would never do that. I would go to the world and say, hey, try South Africa, please. Don't go there. And we do have voices that carry across continents as well, and we will use them. And that won't work. Then they will use the Patriotic Act and say we are fighting against, we're unpatriotic. Yet who's unpatriotic? You see. So the government needs to put an end to this. They need to rein in their officials that are abusing their roles and offices criminally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sipho. To our viewers, we're now taking questions in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So you can raise your hand. I see that Professor David Moore's hand is already up. Professor David Moore, can you try to be brief so that we try to afford more people time to ask?
Oh, there we go. I couldn't get the mute to go on. Yeah, and I didn't see your message to me, Dr. Zamchia, so I wrote a comment. And so I said, what should be done? You know, this has been a really fascinating seminar and tragic, and you brought in some really good speakers from the intelligentsia, from the royalty, from close observers to dispossession. And also, we're on another one this morning with Salo, so you've had a busy day. But I think the question that keeps coming around to me, both this morning and now, is, you know, we're looking at a society in deep traumatic transitions. What kind of transitions are going on? What kind of new classes are forming within this sort of purgatory? I think it was, I can't remember the name, the woman who was talking about, you know, private property rights should emerge. And the woman who was speaking from the sort of royal, traditional, cultural perspective was talking about indigenous knowledge and public participation. And we've had these kind of vague ideas of what is a state and what is an elite, and there are some individuals, but I think we really have to look carefully at what social structures and accumulation structures are emerging in the cities and in the country. And we had a very good perspective there on what's happening with urban changes. So, and I keep thinking, you know, it was actually Thabo Mbeki who years ago in 2001 said, look, this is a country which is being run by the lumpen proletariat. The war veterans have taken over. And I think it's George Chiramba who talks about the lumpen an awful lot in a very derogatory way about the MDC and the workers. But I keep wondering, do we have kind of a lumpen bourgeoisie emerging here? And how can we actually expect relationship between that class and the state to do anything like Sipho just said? We got to have the government to do things right. Anyway, those are just sort of broad, depressing questions, but we need the social scientists to think about them more. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. I think they are very useful. Any more questions?
Planning, we have Bradley Kumalo.
Yes, Kumalo. Go ahead, Bradley Kumalo.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. I had put my question on the chat.
Yourself?
Yes. So I'm Bradley Kumalo, and I'm from the University of the Western Cape. Still a student right now. But my question really probably would be directed specifically to Professor Moyo. And it was, if I can read as how I wrote it on the chart, can he reflect on the possibility that these evictions and behaviors are driven by the government land reform policy that was initially instituted around 98 to the 2000s? And really the question is, could that policy have led to an uncontrollable spiral of this phenomenon? And should the government correction be starting there? Was there a precedent that was set, especially when you start speaking about property rights?
Thank you. Very clear, Professor Moyo. Note that one. Can we have more questions? And there's another question in the chats. How effective is the legal route in fighting these dispossessions? So maybe one of you, Sipo, maybe you might want to take that, or Cynthia. Any more questions? Do we have any more questions? Okay, Prof, maybe you can respond to that question directed to you. Prof. Jonathan Moyo.
The first answer is no. The second answer is no. The attempt to connect this to the reform program, in my view, may be an interesting academic exercise, but in terms of what we have presented, it doesn't speak to that, because we've specifically said that this is being done by corrupt individuals who are taking advantage of the land reform program. It's not a problem that is being caused by the land reform program or a consequence of it. In fact, the land reform program has to be defended against these people, especially when it comes to the communal farmers, but also the A2 farmers. So it's no. I should take advantage of this small opportunity to answer the second question about whether or rather how effective is the legal route. When all else is said and done, and given that we would rather have political solutions to these problems or challenges, the legal route is very effective. In fact, this is what gives or should give people hope, because the courts in Zimbabwe, by and large, have dealt with this issue very well. There is a landmark case that involved a Mulambo in Rusape, an indigenous farmer who is exactly in the situation that Mr. Malunga is, and who was successful in arguing that the government cannot dispossess or repossess land from an indigenous farmer, such as Malunga and his colleagues. The case number for that judgment is HC 41416. So the legal route is very effective, and I encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sipo, do you have anything to say? I don't see any more questions.
On that note, on that wonderful note by the professor regarding the legal prospects, I will say nothing more.
Okay. Cynthia, your experiences on the legal route, does it work in this context?
Okay, thank you. I think on our experience on the legal route, I think it works only when we have the title deeds or papers for your land. But when it comes to communal lands, it actually takes time. For example, I've already pointed out that the community took to court Greenfield, and that was in 2012, but the court is still ongoing, and Greenfield is still encroaching into people and dispossessing people as well. So I think it actually takes time, and sometimes to me it's a no situation. I think there is need to have or to put more ways in place. For example, policy change, I think, will be a way to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. We are left with 1 minute, and let me take this opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists for making time, and also to thank everybody who has managed to attend on behalf of PLUS and the University of the Western Cape. I think we have heard stories about the ongoing non-voluntary dispossession in communities, but also that there are others who are being targeted by certain corrupt officials within the state. But I would still argue that they are also being enabled by state institutions in order to sustain that. And I think debate will continue to rage on what kind of state is emerging in Zimbabwe. And as David Moore said, perhaps a more deeper class analysis. But immediately we hear that there's need really to consult, there's need for voluntary consent, there's need to revisit some policies. And let me also add that there's also need perhaps to build political pressure from below that continuously challenges the center. So thanks everybody. And we'll continue to have more meetings and more webinars like this, and we'll be contacting you through our usual channels. Have a very good day. Goodbye.